Warm greetings to all our friends from all continents. Welcome to today's MAI free webinar, How Can Authors and Publishers Reach Readers with Podcasts, with Melvin Rivera Velasquez. This is Ramon Rocha from Media Associates International. Thank you for joining us. We have 23 who registered for today's webinar, and a lot of countries are represented. England, Ecuador, Kenya, Bangladesh, Congo, Spain, United States, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Canada, Benin, the Philippines, Brazil, Hong Kong, and Croatia. Thank you for joining. This is an interactive webinar. Our speaker will divide his presentation into three, and after each part, he will ask you to please ask your questions. And I think we also would like to ask you, how many of you have tried podcasting? Type in if you have tried doing podcasts, because our speaker would like to know if anyone would have tried podcasting. Marlene says not yet. Barbara Mumir said no. Tracy said hello, T. No. So all of us are Melvin, all of us have not tried podcasting.
Good.
So I think your audience is that we would like to know.
Excellent.
Publishers are looking or interested in authors who are already known or has a significant number of Facebook followers or has a popular blog that engages readers. In recent years, this has been known as the author's platform. Now, podcasting can be a powerful tool for authors and publishers to reach readers. What is podcasting and how do you actually start doing it? We are blessed to have with us a podcasting practitioner and who's been successful in using podcasts to reach his audience. Melvin Rivera Velasquez is the head of Global Bible Publishing at United Bible Societies. I have placed his email address here if you would like to interact with him. After the webinar, please take note of his email address. We're so happy to have Melvin with us, a practitioner of podcasts. So thank you, Melvin, and please
Hello.
present. Take it away.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Can you hear me? I hope that everybody is listening clearly. My name is Melvin Rivera, as Ramon explained. I am working in publishing, but I started in broadcasting. I was a radio announcer long time ago. I was 18 years old, and a Christian radio station opened on my hometown. I am from Puerto Rico, a small island near Cuba, Dominican Republic, and very close to the United States. And in Puerto Rico, a mission from Michigan decided to start a Christian radio station. They didn't have any Christian announcer on the area. So, because I was
Melvin, excuse
a
me.
little bit,
Excuse me,
uh-huh,
Melvin. Uh, it's not very clear. So maybe you remove your microphone and then if you want to listen to me,
okay,
you put it on.
okay,
Because,
okay. Hear me now better?
yeah, I think
What
it's
about
better
now?
now. But if you want to listen to me, you put it on.
Sounds better?
Yes. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, good. Well, let me repeat what I was saying. My name is Melvin Rivera. I started before working on publishing. I started in broadcasting. My first experience was in a Christian radio station in my hometown in the south of Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is located near Cuba and near the United States in the south part of United States, very close. It's a small island of 3.5 million people. And this radio station that was started by a ministry from Michigan, they didn't have a Christian announcer. So they hired me, that I was working in a secular radio station, and I became the first Christian listening to the sermons of the broadcasters. Uh, Eventually, I became program director, manager of the radio station, and then several decades after that, I became director of the Puerto Rico Bible Society. And few decades after that, I became publishing director for the 22 Spanish-speaking of Latin America. And then about 5 years ago, I became global Bible publishing head. My desire to start a podcast is related to publishing and to my passion for few things that I am doing additional to my work in the Bible societies. I have been blogging from 1996, and right now I have 3 blogs. One blog about the history of my hometown. I love history, and I have published a book about the history of my hometown. And this is a blog that I update probably every month or every 2 months. And I have 2 other blogs that I update more frequently. And there's one called Cambio180.com, means cambio means change, and is lead uh, to reach pastors and Christians leaders that speak Spanish. And the blog is about digital communication and leadership. And the other podcast, the other blog that I have is a blog about vegetarian cooking. I am a weekend vegetarian cooker. So I learn, my method is everything that I learn better if I teach it. So I was doing these 3 efforts on my part-time, and even when I was traveling, and I decided to work on another book. I have one book about history of my hometown, and I decided to start a book about leadership, Christian leadership. And because of that, I decided to start the podcast. The purpose of the podcast, in my case, is to create a platform. I don't know if you have read the book of Michael Hyatt called Platform. Michael Hyatt was the president of Thomas Nelson a few years ago, and he's now a consultant in the areas of leadership and communication and publishing. And Michael Hyatt did a book about platform, and he probably is one of the bestseller books that self-publishers are reading. My wife have just published her first book. We are doing all our books, our personal books. We are doing this self-publish, using self-publishing, and she's also doing the same thing, following Michael Hyatt recommendations. Michael Hyatt said, if you have a good platform, if you have a good followers, then it's going to be very easy to be an author that people read, because you can be a good author, but if nobody listen, if nobody read what you are doing, then you're losing your time. So I didn't want to lose my time, so I started a podcast 1 year and a half ago. And the idea is to create the platforms. And the idea is to write my book. So I am right now in Ecuador. I have been talking about two things, two things that I have a passion, which is digital communication and Christian leadership. And I was in one city on Friday speaking about digital communication in the mission of the church, which is going to be my next book after this one. And then I have yesterday a meeting with pastors in another city talking about 5 principles of leadership that I have learned in my career. And what they don't know is that the manual of 45 pages that was published by the Ecuador Bible Society is based on things that I have discussed in the podcast and is based on articles that I have wrote on my blog. So the podcast is helping me to create the platform, and the blog is helping me to publish my next book. And when I am speaking about this, I am improving the content that I am going to publish as a book. I have a goal of words that I'm going to have for my book. And now, after I return to Miami on next Christmas, I'm going to take 1 week just to accelerate the development of the book. And when I finish this, I'm sure that I will have a platform because I have a very active social media presence. I have a blog and I have a podcast. So if you are starting to write or to self-publish, you need to consider this. And I follow this, and this is the way, in a sense, that Market Hyatt did it. He wrote the book. Uh, I hear one of his podcasts. He said that he wrote the book on Christmas. He went to the mountains and spent 2 or 3 weeks just writing with no internet connection available for his friends. But he based all his book on everything that he wrote on the blog. So it's interesting that when you write and people know that you have something to say, when they hear you, uh, they really can follow you. They will say, if a book from this person come to the market, I want to be the first to read it. So I am interviewing in my podcast a lot of friends and a lot of people that I don't know. So I am meeting new people. Tomorrow I will be interviewing by Skype a couple of psychologists that are going to talk about the why youth people commit suicide. 2 weeks ago, I interviewed several leaders of pastoral association talking about the same thing. And this is the way that I am building my book, learning from others, doing research, and I am learning from others, not reading, because I don't have too much time to read these guys. And this is in Latin America, there is a very poor culture for leaders to write. So I get more by oral than reading because they don't write too much. So I'm learning from them, I'm doing research, and I am creating a platform all at the same time with the strategy of social media, podcasting, and blogging. Let's go to the first one. Why podcasting? When I was in radio, I remember I spent 10 years doing a talk show. The Christian radio station that I was leading, it was very different to the regular Christian radio stations. It was aimed to non-Christians, so it was it emphasized news and secular music to reach the people with small ads and small spots of 30 seconds. So when I was in radio, I was thinking millions of people were listening to me, or at least thousands. But I don't how to measure that because the station didn't have enough budget to buy a survey from the broadcasting industry. So I rely on feedback from people. But at that time, radio was broadcasting, was one person talking to others. We didn't have too much feedback. It was difficult to get feedback from people. And we didn't know how many people was listening. Now with podcasting, it's totally different. Podcasting, I know the stats, how many people are listening, how many people are downloading, from where they are coming. So because I know all these stats that I didn't know when I was doing radio, I can target my marketing. Yesterday, I was checking the last podcast that I record, and I noticed that it was not the, I was not achieving the target that I have for that edition of the podcast. So I went to Facebook and I paid $5 to show that link to Facebook followers in 3 countries that I know that in Latin America they have a very high audience of podcasts, which are Mexico, United States, and Colombia, and Puerto Rico. 4. So I did that because I know what are the countries that are have more podcast listeners, and I know where the countries where there are more people connected. So right now I can do that with podcasting because I have stats. Podcasting is growing. Last year, a company called Edison Research did a survey in the United States, and they found that 33% have listened to a podcast. In 2014, they said 2.5 billions of people have downloaded a podcast. That doesn't mean that they have listened. And we will talk a little bit later about stats. But if you know that there is an audience is growing more than people expect. And what are the reasons why people are listening to podcasts? Listeners like a podcast because it is convenient, it is portable, and it's free. I am a listener of podcasts because you need to learn from others, not to repeat the same mistakes, and also to improve. So I follow dozens of podcasts. When I go to my office, I live 45 minutes from my office. Instead of listening radio, I listen podcasts. When I go to the supermarket, I put my earbuds and I do the shopping. I am a volunteer to do shopping in my house because I take the time to learn. And I listen good preachers because there are too many sermons as podcasts. So I listen Ravi Zacharias and a few of the best ones. But I also listen podcasts about leadership, and I listen a lot of secular podcasts, and I try to listen the best podcasts in the market from the secular world, so I can learn from them and be more effective in the mission that I think that I have. So convenient. I can listen to podcasts in every place. If I am in a place and it's boring, if I am in a doctor, I listen to podcasts. I I can take the earphone, my phone with an application for podcasting, and there are applications free for Android, for iOS, an application for Windows, and it's free. Nobody have is selling their podcast. So, what is the other reason why podcasting is growing? You can reach a niche audience. If you like uh, to travel to Asia, there is a lot of podcasts about traveling to Asia. If you like to read or to listen about diets, there is a lot of podcasts about diet. Parenting, how to live a good marriage. You can listen any kind of podcast because podcasts are personal. When I was working on radio, I speak to a massive audience, and people need to come to me, turn on the radio, and if they don't like what I was saying and I get bored, or they get bored, they switch to another radio station. With the podcast, they can stop. But if you have something interesting, and let's say they are traveling to their office, and they arrive to their office, they stop, and when they finish their work, they can continue listening. You don't have that advantage with radio. You cannot find a niche audience. It's very difficult because radio is massive. But with podcasts, you can focus in an audience. If you are writing books about children books, start a podcast about children book, and start a podcast and a blog. I believe the combination is terrific. Even though my theory that blogging is have a lot of threats at this moment, but that's another thing, and in the future I can talk about blogging. You can reach your audience, and there's another element of podcasting that I think is the reason why it's growing so much is the experience of the intimacy of the earbuds. The intimacy of the earbuds. When I am listening a podcast, the tone of the voice of that person is totally different than when I am reading something that the person writes. You become connected to the audience, and the audience become connected to you. I have people that are listening to my podcast that when I travel to Latin America or I am in, they to me and say, "Hey, I know you were Melvin Rivera because I know that voice." And this is really why podcast is growing, because people become your friends even when they don't know you. I am a friend of all the people that I listen, and I know things from them that I cannot find easily reading their readings, their articles. When you write an article, you rewrite, but when you are doing a podcast, it's more natural. Even if you have a script, you can talk from the heart, and really is one of the reasons why so many people are doing podcasting and listening to podcasts. Okay, let's say that you have decided, okay, Melvin, you have convinced me, my publishing house or me as an author, I need a podcast to create a platform or to create a brand, because you also need to create a brand for your publishing house, for you as an author, and people need to know that you are an expert. And sometimes you are an expert in one area and you love that area, you are passionate about that area, but nobody knows, only you and your wife and your mother. So podcasts can help you to make people understand that you are an expert. What are the formats? If you decide to do a podcast, say, okay, first, what I need to do? One of the biggest mistakes that people do is starting with equipment. It's totally wrong. Equipment is important, and I will talk about that at the end, but it's not the first. The first is what is what you want to achieve. What is the audience that you want to reach? What you want to achieve with that audience, and how you are going to do that. And the podcast formats is one of the how. There are podcasts of one people talking about something. There are other podcasts about people talking about hosted conversation, two-person talking about one issue, or a group conversation. I don't like group conversation because suddenly I notice when they are in a group, they start, because podcasting is a little bit informal. This kind of group conversation are the most informal, and people forget the audience, and they start joking between themselves, and at the end they have a time as friends talking together, but at the end you don't receive anything. So I have my doubts with the group conversation format. I like I have I listen podcasts of one person, an expert, talking about one issue, uh, co-host conversation. Interview format is the format that I am using, and storytelling or documentary style. From this list, which one you think have the biggest audience? The biggest audience is the last on this slide. Storytelling or documentary style. Why? Because we like storytelling. Jesus Christ used storytelling in his ministries with amazing success. And pastors sometimes forget storytelling and they become expert in many things, but they don't tell a story that take you to understand what they are trying to teach. And some of these programs that I will recommend with the storytelling are Serial. Serial was a series of 12 or 13 programs done last year by a group of professionals, former National Public Radio uh, producers, and they developed a story about a young guy from a Korean young guy that was accused more than 10 years ago of killing his girlfriend. And they did research about all the cases. They went and interviewed all the people in the past of this guy, even the people that accused him, even the lawyers. And they developed this story as a documentary, trying to find if he was guilty, he's in jail, or he was wrongly accused. And they developed this in 13 chapters. And last December, they became the podcast with the higher audience. More than 10 million people downloaded their podcast. So if you want to do that, you need to know that storytelling and documentary requires a lot of work. Some of these programs have 6, 7 people working 1 week in only one story. So it's the one that have the biggest audience, but it's the more difficult and it's the more powerful. I love storytelling. I wish I had the resources to change my podcast to storytelling, but because I don't have it, I have the second one that is most popular, interview format. What is an interview format? And let me tell you what I do. I have done 78 programs during the last 78 weeks. I travel a lot, so that means it's a challenge because every 2 weeks, every month, I am traveling. This week, I am in Ecuador. The week before, I was in Singapore. I arrived to Singapore immediately. Your event finalized, and the week before, I was in a meeting in UK of the executive board of the United Bible Societies. And next Monday, I'm going to Philadelphia. My work is very difficult. The good thing of this trip is that I am with my boss. You know who is my boss? My wife. So traveling is difficult to have an interview format. So what I have done is I do everything mobile. And I'm going to share a little bit about that because there are not many people doing mobile podcasting. And I have been doing that 1 year and a half. And I recommend it because the best recorder is the one that you have in the pocket. So I do all my recordings with an iPhone. So these are the formats. But there are 4 steps that you need to follow if you are going to produce a podcast. First, you need to plan, you need to produce, then you need to publish, and then you need to promote. Many people said podcasting is easy, and I said it's easy when you have a passion to do that. It takes time, but the rewards are so amazing that really I believe every author should have a podcast and a blog. Then you need to produce, you need to record, you need to edit. There are people that don't edit, and I don't listen to their podcast because always we do mistakes, and when we do mistakes, or our interviewer do mistakes, we are losing the valuable time of listeners. And then you need to publish. Where to publish? We are going to discuss that, and how to publish. And then you need to promote. Uh, if you don't invite people, if people don't find you, you're you're not doing anything. So it's you need to have a plan, you need to produce, you need to publish. But if you don't promote, especially in social media, you will lose your time. So let's start with the planning. Who will be your avatar? This is a concept, avatar, meaning your specific audience, your unique audience. I did a master degree on business administration and marketing, and I did a specialization in marketing research in Ohio. And when I was doing my specialization, I was doing a specialization in focus groups at that time. And there was very clear the importance to knowing your audience and who you are trying to reach with your product. So when I started podcasting, I say I want to define who is my avatar, who is my model, a listener that I consider that I am talking to him. One of the things that I learned in broadcasting, most of the people don't like their voices, but your voice change when you think in another person. I remember when I was very young, I was in love with this beautiful girl. So when I was reading an ad about the restaurant, I was really thinking that I was taking her to the restaurant, having a nice night with her. So my voice changed. What is the relation this with the avatar? If you have a person in mind, that will be the person that you are talking, your voice will change, your tone will change. It's not the same when you are talking with your boss, that when you are talking with your wife, when you are talking with your kids. So I believe that defining an avatar is the most important first step to create a podcast. My avatar, my theme, my podcast is about Christian leadership and digital communication. So my avatar is a pastor from Dominican Republic. He's a friend of mine. He's a young pastor. He was executive in an advertising agency in his country. The Lord called him. He became a pastor, and this is his profile. He's a digital
a digital non well he's a young guy. He's a digital follower. He's using digital all the time in his church. He have a church of very young people. He used a lot of all the communication media, digital and natural. And the program of his church is very interesting. He invited an atheist to a panel in his church, and he invited in that panel he have an atheist, he have a, a secular singer who started on the church and now he's no longer in a church. And the idea was that these people will talk what they think about the church and religion. And when I hear that, I say, this is my avatar. I want pastors that innovate. I want pastors that really are looking to go to the next step. I know that there's a lot of pastors with my age that they are not learning, they're not innovating. But I say I will focus on this guy, and everything that I do, I think on this guy. So I always, when I am selecting the thing of my program, I always think what my avatar from Dominican Republic, Fausto Liriano is his name, what Pastor Fausto Liriano will think about this. And he didn't know it until 3 programs ago that I mentioned that. He was my first interviewer, and he didn't know that he was my avatar. But you know what? He has become, during all these 78 programs, one of the most faithful listeners. And that means that what I am doing, the content that I am developing, is fulfilling his need as a young pastor that want to innovate, that want to reach the millennial generation, and who is very focused on the Bible. So that's the criteria that I use to select my avatar. My second avatar is president, the president of the board of a church, my church in Miami, Coral Gables. He's a professional. He's an insurance professional. He's committed to the church in a way that you cannot believe. You know, he is our church really is a church with a good leadership because the president of the board is a good leader. So I think on him and I think on the pastor, a layman and a pastor. This is my avatar. Who will be your avatar? You need to start thinking about that, writing names. First, write the profile, and then write names of people that you know that have this profile. And when you are talking and when you're selecting, your voice will change. You need to plan the content. You need to know what you are trying to achieve with this audience. I want that people change and and the church in Latin America became more relevant in a society that is changing. That's my goal. And I want pastors to innovate. I want the pastors to really become a different kind of pastors that we have now. Because we have a big challenge. Latin America, Asia, and Africa have the fastest church growing. But now, because globalization, the new generation is interconnected, and the millennials in Latin America are becoming more similar to millennials in Europe and North America, and millennials in Africa are becoming more similar to Europeans and North American, and also Asian. So if we don't take care about the millennial generation, we're going to lose a generation, and these people are going to be the next leaders. So I'm trying to move the church and the leadership of the church from point A to point Z. And the way that I'm doing is writing and podcasting. And podcasting and blogging is helping me to create a platform so they can read the books that I'm going to write, that I am writing. we need to plan the content. I have a plan for the whole year. It's a plan that I said, okay, I'm going to introduce this person about this theme. I am reading leadership books and listening Christian leadership podcasts. So I am getting ideas of things that are getting attention of pastors. One of my last podcasts was why pastors commit suicide. And we don't have that case in Latin America. But we have the case of pastors that get depressed. So we discussed it deep with several leaders that issue because I said if we discuss this before this becomes a problem, they are depressed. The 5 or 6 North American pastors that commit suicide the last few years, they were successful, some of them, but they were depressed and they could not manage and they commit suicide. So I said, if we talk about this, we are helping pastors. So you need to plan the content. So I have every week, all the 52 weeks of the year, I have a name who are going to interview and what is the thing. But things happen. I came to Ecuador. I met the bishop of the Pentecostal church, one of the Pentecostal denominations in Ecuador. And I noticed in my conversation with him, because we traveled together for one day by car, and he started talking to me that he is going to preach about why pastors resign. And then I remember that I read about some stats in the United States that the normal church in the United States have 200 members, but they takes a church to grow to 500 6 years. And this research showed that most of the pastors resign on the 5th year. So they get depressed, uh, not happy with the results. They resign when they usually what the trends say is when the church is going to move to another level. So I remember that two things. So I said to him, we need to do a podcast. So tomorrow, Thursday, I'm going to do an interview with him by Skype to talk about why pastors are resigning. And he's going to make an analogy because he supervises pastors, and he's going to make an analogy, and he's going to talk about the challenge that the pastor face. This was not on my plan. So my plan is very flexible. I went to Ethiopia last month, and I said, I need to do a podcast about Muslims because there are many pastors with a lot of questions and they're very ignorant. So I interview one of our translators that is living in Nigeria and the director of a Bible societies in the Gulf. And I said, I'm going to interview you in English. I'm going to translate this to Spanish. I'm going to use another friend who is a reader to do their voices. And I'm going to interview a missionary that have worked with Muslim Islamic communities. And the idea is kind of education for the church. So while I'm working in that program will be a little bit like a documentary. I have done maybe one or two this style of documentary. So even when I have a plan, I am always looking for ways to alter the plan if I have new opportunities. And the Lord is always showing me new opportunities. And then the second step is to produce the audio. I work mobile. If you see that photo, that's me. This is a pastor that is a professor of preaching. And I was talking about preaching in the church. And he is a summer courses professor in Princeton University. And he's an author, he's a social media guy and a teaching guy. At that stage, that was last year, I did this interview in the hotel, in the room in the hotel, with two mics that I don't longer use, with audio interface recording on my iPad, and with one earphone, which is the earphone that I am using here today. So you need to produce. How do you produce a program? Well, you first record. If it's an interview, I'm going to tell you what I'm doing with the interview format. I record the interview, and then I invite the person. I do some research. I spend 1 hour before every program doing some research about the person and about the thing of the program. I send 4 or 5 questions to him so he can come prepared, and then we have a talk. You know what I found? I found that it's more interesting and more valuable to interview people that are talking, preaching, or writing about this issue because they have their ideas fresh. So I do a lot of research, desk research, checking who is writing what, and then I call that person. Hey, I would like to talk about that issue, and I'm giving them an opportunity to expand their research, but at the same time, I am learning because they are also teaching me. And I think teaching, learning is a critical experience, uh, the most important thing for a Christian communicator. You produce the audio, I record on my iPad. I'm going to show you the application that I use. Is Twisted Wave. It's an application, costs $10. I record on my iPad. It's a high quality application. There are others for Android. You need to check how many starts they have in Google Play, and select one good that you can record with two mics with an audio interface. So I do this, a lot of this is with two mics, but also I do with one mic, and I use this mic. This is a lavalier, small lavalier. It's digital. It's a new mic, came last year from Sennheiser and from a company called Apogee. They are leaders in digital, and Sennheiser is leader in mics. So I did this. I use this. I also use this. I use this mic. This is a mic called is being used is being used for video. Why I use this mic? Because these mics are very light. So the reason why I changed from that mic to this is because these are lighter. I carry those everywhere that I go. You can check my backpack, and I have these two mics. And this mic, which is a professional mic, uh, I connect to the iPad with this cable. I connect the earphone here, and I do a recording. I can do the recording with one mic, with two mics. Then I edit the podcast on the same application that I record. I eliminate homes. I eliminate mistakes. Sometimes people say something, and oh, I did a mistake. Usually, when I start in a recording, I said, "We are recording. I'm going to edit everything. So don't be afraid if you commit a mistake. You just stop and say, repeat it, and repeat what you said. Then I go and eliminate all that part. So I edit homes. I did too much space there. There's a lot of people that have a problem with. So I eliminate all that, and also technical mistakes, like sometimes his voice is louder than mine. So I edit that, and then I have another application called Auphonic, German company. When I finish on my iPad, and let me show you. Ooh, this is time is sorry, sorry. This is the Stepwave application that I use. So when I finish editing this, then I open this file. When everything is ready, I have recorded the introduction and the close of the program, which is very important, with professional announcers. And you know what I did? I went to Fiverr, Fiv, V as in Victor, ERR, Fiverr.com. And I hired a person that did my voiceover for my introduction, and I paid $5. Could you believe that? And there are people doing that in Spanish, in French, in English, in German, and I'm sure that in other major languages worldwide. Fiverr.com. To come to the person that really is a professional and is working this for 30 seconds introduction in $5, I tested several, but I spent probably $25 testing 5 announcers. I wrote the script, sent the script, pay $5 in Fiverr, and in less than 30 hours, I have the audio. Then I went to other place and find music that is copyright free, and then I create my introduction and my closing. When I finish with that, I open this application called Auphonic and takes my file in the application to a server in Germany. And that's a way that you can have a high quality program, even when you are recording the program and the dog is barking, or your kid comes and say, ah, in the next room, because not always you can do, not all people can have a professional studio. But if you have this, when I put the file through this application and I put start, goes to their server, and they return this to my Dropbox account as an MP3 with no noise on background. So this is the way that my program sounds good. Good mic. If you want to spend money, I always recommend to start with the cheapest mic. High quality, low price mic. But after you are sure that this is what you are going to do, then buy the best mic that you can afford. And the rest, you can record with your iPhone, your Android. You can work on that. The second thing that you need to publish a podcast is you need to publish the podcast in your blog, which I don't recommend, because if you have many visitors, your blog will be down, or your service provider will not like that. So I recommend to look at external. And the one that I am using is a company called Libsyn. You publish with Libsyn, and then they return to you a URL, and you publish that URL in your social media accounts. My recommendation is promote your podcast using social media. Check and research what are the social media in your country, the most popular social media channels. I know that in Latin America is Facebook. I know that in Latin America is YouTube. YouTube is the second place where people search these days. If you can do a podcast in video, do it. I don't have plan to do that, but if you can do it, it's more work, but you have more access. So I know YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. These are the leaders in Latin America. And WhatsApp, you should be amazed. WhatsApp is not popular in the United States, but in Latin America is so popular. So I focus in that places. I promote, and I follow Gail Kawasaki, a famous social media marketer. He said, he said that people don't go to social media all at the same time. He said, you should try to publish in different times. So sometimes I publish at 6 o'clock Miami time. When I have a new podcast, I publish the link in Facebook with an introduction, and always with a photo. Social media is visual. People like photos. And then I publish at 12 o'clock in pastors' pages. There are Pastors Association pages that they allow people to publish. So I go there and publish, and then in the night I publish in my wife has a blog called Christians.com, which is a blog about Christian news and devotionals. She's a Christian journalist. She have a master's degree in journalism. So I go to the place and also get her audience. And you don't need to do that yourself. You can download an application, a service where you do that. You can do that in the morning and prepare everything to be published at the time and in the media that you want. There are applications that do that. So these are the promotion that I recommend. My recommendation is concentrate and focus social media in the places where you know that the audience that you want to reach. These are the channels that they use the most. Where to record? You can record in a laptop, a PC, or a Mac. You can record in a tape recorder. This is my favorite, Zoom H5. And you can record also on your iPhone or your Android or your Samsung. You can record in all these. I started with the laptop and I said, oh, I don't like to be seated in the laptop. And then software for laptop are very expensive. There is one called Audacity that is free. I recommend that. If you are going to use it, your laptop, use Audacity or GarageBand. These are free and they're very good. So then I moved to the Zoom H5, but you know, it was carrying on my trips another device. So after 3 programs, I stay with the iPhone because I have the iPhone with me all the time. I have the script on my iPad mini. I travel with my iPad mini. I don't travel with a laptop. I go everywhere with my iPad mini. I do presentation from my iPad mini. I prepare my presentation from my iPad mini until next week that I'm going to buy the iPad Pro. And these are the mics that I recommend. If you are starting, these are very inexpensive mics. The most recommended mic for podcasting is the Audio Technica ATR 2100. Why? Because you can connect this mic to the USB of your laptop and you can connect this to your iPad or your iPhone. And if you have an adapter, you can connect this mic to your Android. So this mic is Audio Technica. This is my favorite company for mics. It's amazing, the sound. It is directional. You know, you need to find, it's better the directional mic because focus directly on your voice. Don't get the sound of the environment. And the others are good. The Blue Yeti is very popular. I don't like it. It's too big, too heavy. I cannot travel with that. It's very nice looking. Looks like old mic. The mic in the center is the Apogee mic. The one in the center is amazing, but it's not directional. It's very light. I used to travel with that. And the Shure is the mic that is more present in every church. Shure SM58. You can do, if you have an adapter like this one. This is an adapter that you connect your professional mic here, and in the other end, you can connect this to your laptop or your device, your phone. So you can use a Shure SM58 with an adapter. What is if you have resources, you say, no, I want the best. Okay, these are the most popular in podcasting. The one that I am using is not popular with beginners. It's not, these are expensive mics. We are talking about more than 200, between 200 and 350. But the Audio Technica shotgun is my favorite. I use that in my house. It's the only disadvantage is 14 inches, but I record everything with that in my house. And I have other mics like this when I am traveling that are shorter and smaller and less weight. The next one is the RE20. RE20 is about $350. It's amazing. This is the microphone more used on, but it's heavy. And if you have that mic, you will use it only in your house. You cannot travel with that. So I don't like that. And the next is the Hale PR40 from a company called Hale. It's also amazing. It's good for a studio in your house. And the next one is Rode, Australian company, the Rode Podcaster. These are good. If you have resources, any of the three will be good. In my case, I select the first one for two reasons. I found that the people for National Public Radio that are doing the best documentary style podcasts that sounds amazing are using that mic. And second, because it's not expensive, it's like, well, there are mics that cost $1,000, and this one costs 250. But the one that I recommend you, the previous one, the Audio Technica, costs $62 right now in Amazon, and 3 days ago was in $32 because the Black Friday in the States, they put it for 1 day, $32. When I went, it was done. I was so happy because I can recommend you a good mic, inexpensive, for $32. But this is the mic that if you have, then you can use it. Then you need to have a mixer. There are many people that use musicians' mixers. I don't like musician mixers because they were done for musicians. I prefer a small box that I can connect without adapters to the iPhone and to the iPad. And this is the one that I selected. It's very inexpensive. Oh, I forgot to say, most of my equipment, I bought it in eBay, used it. I tested. If I don't like, I sell it again at the same price that I bought it. So you can get good prices. This device new costs 150, 175. You can use it for half of that in eBay. So instead of a mixer, look for an audio device that you can connect two mics if you're going to do interviews and have all the controls that you need. These are the software that you can use. If you are working on a laptop, you can use GarageBand, Logic Pro, that is commercial, Audacity, that is free for your laptop, Audio Hijack, that's a professional software, and then Adobe Audition. And then to reduce all these background horrible noises that we have when we record on a non-professional studio, you can go to this place, Levelator, download their software, and it's the same that Auphonic do. I pay $15 a month to use Auphonic. With Levelator, I don't need to pay, but Levelator is not updated. The owner have abandoned the software, so that means it could work, it could not work in the future. When you have all that, you have your program edited, you have your program in a server provider that is specialized in podcasting. My recommendation is Libsyn.com. This is the company that I use. I pay $15. I put the podcast there. After I put that, they give me a URL, an RSS, and I went to iTunes and opened an account on iTunes, and I put that URL in iTunes, and every time that I publish in Libsyn a new chapter, iTunes is updated, and people can do their own comments. They can subscribe in iTunes. iTunes is the biggest globally, but you need to check if there are in your countries others, because podcasting is growing. So if there's others in your countries, use both. You can have in many different places showing. iTunes is to show, it's not to host. To host are this company, Libsyn Podomatic, SoundCloud, Serial Simple Podcast, and the other, I don't remember the name. I cannot see it. So these are the places that you can explore to host your podcast. I would like to finalize with the beginner mistakes. Most of the people that start don't have a plan. Most of the people don't test when they are recording, and when they finish, oh, I did a mistake. It didn't record. That happened to me in my second podcast. After half an hour of interview, the guy said, I need to say sorry, I did a mistake and I didn't check. So I learned that. And be aware of ambient sound. When I'm doing a recording, I always say people, if you are in Skype, look for a very small a room with no noise, and or if I am doing, I go to a place where I can have a better sound because there is not too much reverberation. And prepare your guests. Uh, if you do that, you can do a terrific program. This is one of my setups, and with this I finalized. First, I started with the RE20, with the iPad, and with the Zoom 5 and my phone. When I call people by Skype on my phone, I recorded on the Zoom H5 uh, recorder and in the iPad. The Zoom was a backup. It's good to have a backup, but now I am not using the Zoom. I am doing everything directly to the iPhone when I am recording directly, or when I am doing Skype, I record on the iPad and use the iPhone for the Skype call. This is my current iPhone, the Audio Technica, and the mixer. Additional to that, I have another equipment called DBX 287S, and this is a compressor that helped me to improve and reduce the noises of the recording that I do. So when I don't have a good studio, all these tools help me to improve the quality, and people think that I am doing the recording in a studio. Last 2 weeks, when I was in UK and in Singapore, this was the way that I record my interviews. I was not ready. I was not planning to do an interview, but I found a guy with a story from Hungary. No, Hungary. You know. I don't know how to speak English, and I am forgetting Spanish. Okay, I did this recorded with this mic on my iPhone. So my friends, sorry, I have gone 9 minutes after the hour. Any questions?
Yes, can you hear me?
Okay.
Melvin,
Ramon is saying that
use
he
your.
will get those applications and come and share them with you later. So audacity.com, he has already shared the links. Use my mic. Oh, sorry. So, use your mic so I can hear you. For some reason, that happened when you use technology. You never.
Thank you very much, Melvin.
I'm listening.
There are some questions here. Natalie said, I published a few videos on YouTube, but it did not help because could never figure out how to make the public find them, even with keywords. Any suggestions on how to be discoverable?
I think one of the challenges of the publishing in the new media is how to help people to discover, because YouTube have become so a huge place that really you need to use other social media channels to help people to find you in YouTube.
To find you.
Once they
Yes.
found you, if you are doing a good work, they subscribe and they will come back, and then you can also they can bring their audiences. You know what I
So
did in
use
well, this is not YouTube, but
Facebook.
I was wondering how to create a community, how people can find me for my blog of vegetarian cooking. And I said, well, I'm going to create a community in Facebook and a community in Google Plus. Google Plus have near 2,000 followers. The Facebook community achieved last week 20,000 followers. And you know why? Because I opened the community. I say, hey, you can publish here. So when I am not publishing, they are publishing. Yes, some of the things that they are publishing is not good material, but now that I have 20,000, and there are many others that said, many marketers that say, if you have a community of 20,000 in YouTube or in Facebook or any social media, you have a platform. So I have a platform for vegetarian cooking. I'm not publishing a book of vegetarian cooking. So my goal now is to sustain the vegetarian cooking with the help of my family, my wife, who is a journalist, and to build the new platform for Christian leadership and digital communication. So yes, it's a good platform, but you need to connect other platforms so people can find you. Okay, the next question
Use
I will be
social
doing
media, particularly.
what is the difference between a
Yes.
podcast and YouTube recording versus blah Periscope? Oh, blah Periscope. Periscope is uh, streaming live with your device. If you have an account in Twitter, you can do streaming. You can do streaming. I was preaching with my wife last Saturday. They record in Periscope. They downloaded the recording the next day, and they sent me the copy of the file. I saw the file. I shared with my family the file. But if my friends want to listen the sermon, I can share the file. You can imagine that I am in a very poor community in Cuenca, Ecuador. I was, and these people have access to streaming, thank you to Periscope, because Periscope stream and at the same time record. So if you have a good uh, telephone and you have a good, and better if you have a good lens, because now I have lens wide angle for the iPhone, and you can then grab. Blah is a service. It's a new service. It's grabbing the attention of everyone. It's a new service where you can record correct me if I am wrong. I have not used it. What I hear is that you open an account, you send a link to your guest. He received the link, and he opened the link, and now everything that he talked in his computer will be recorded in Blah, and then with Blah you can publish uh, and do the rest things of the program. So Blah is becoming an interesting alternative. Any other question?
I think for you to be start podcasting, you have to be intentional. My take is that you have to listen to podcasts, you have to learn and be passionate about it. And thank you so much for guiding us
Let me
through
add something to that, Ramon, and
how we can start.
if we don't have any other question, we will finish. Uh, if you are passionate about something, identify what is your passion. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, my passion are things that I will be doing that. I will be doing publishing in print. I will be doing publishing in digital. I will be doing helping people in these areas and leadership. I will be cooking vegetarian, even if nobody pay me. So you need to find your passion, and then something that you
Find
are
your
always
passion.
good, or you that's your if you have a skill, if you have, usually people pay too much attention to their weakness and not to the strengths. If you have a strength in communication, or you have an area that you are passionate, spend your time on that, because I don't notice the time when I am working, and I have help from my wife and others. But the reality, you will need a lot of work. This is this is a long term. Create a platform, which is the purpose of this. Is it takes a lot of time, but it's the rewards so amazing that you will feel you are helping the transformation of more people that you can reach in your local content. And that's the reason what I do. And the second, and with this I will finalize, you need to be consistent. I decided to be consistent, and I have been every week with the half-hour show, every week the last 78 weeks, which means sometimes I need to work ahead of time. Sometimes I have one or two interviews uh, on the plate. But if I have a new interview, I keep that. So if during a weekend I cannot, because I do everything traveling. Sometimes in a hotel, the Wi-Fi signal is not good to upload the file in Libsyn, or it's not good to publish in social media. Oh, sometimes it's crazy. So I try to plan ahead. And if I notice that I am not sure that the hotel or the office where I'm going, or the place, have a good connection, I try to do this in advance in my house and schedule it. Schedule it to be published next week or 2 weeks. And this is the way. But be consistent. If you are consistent and you work with the passion and you have an avatar, the rest is history. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Melvin. We've run out of time. Thank you to Melvin for sharing his experience and expertise on podcasting. And we will send you a recording, the link to the recording of this webinar, and even share with you his PowerPoint presentation. I hope those of us who have not started podcasting will consider seriously. As Melvin said, find your passion, be consistent, plan, produce, promote, and make sure that people discover your podcasts. This webinar is brought to you by Media Associates International. We are passionate about nurturing and developing local writers so they could write in their own language, in their own culture, reach their people with the gospel. We are also passionate about helping Christian publishers so they can develop their local authors, and that we would like to see them financially viable and sustainable. They can continue with their ministry of publishing Christian literature. Our next webinar is on January 12th. We have Chin Tan as our guest, and he will be speaking about publishing God's revelation, publishing from God's perspective. We will not have any webinar in December. It's Christmas, and we will have a rest for the month of December, and we will see you again in January. That's the 12th of January, and we will inform you how to register on that through our website, www.litworld.org. We have just finished our LitWorld 2015, and we are praising the Lord for such a successful conference with 275 delegates from 51 countries. And we would like to see you again in January for our next webinar. So thank you very much. Thank you, Melvin, for sharing. Thank you for your time. Have a safe trip back to Miami today. God bless everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye-bye for now.